Even when we have the best of intentions, it is so easy to get things wrong when it comes to gardening. Even those of us that have been doing it for a while get it wrong over and over again. And especially for new gardeners, there's a lot that can go wrong. So join me as I discuss 10 common mistakes that new gardeners can make. Hi, I'm GardenerScott. And even though I say these are new gardener mistakes, a lot of them are mistakes that many gardeners make. In fact, I'm still struggling with a number of them. But as a new gardener, if you know going into it that these are some of the things that might be going wrong with your garden, it might give you an advantage for next season. And the first common mistake is actually the location of your garden. So many gardeners pick a spot because it's open in their backyard and they think that's where I'm going to put my garden. But it might not be the best choice. Or you move into a home that already has a garden and you assume that that's the best spot. Well, that might not be right either. If you're thinking about starting a new garden, or you have a garden but you're not sure it's in the right spot, well, walk through it. Look around. Start looking at the things like the sun and shade, and try to pick a spot that gets more sun than shade. Ideally, at least 6 hours of sun a day. Where's your water located? Are you going to have to drag a lot of hoses? Do you even have water that's available for your garden? Look at factors like animals. Do you have dogs or cats that might get into your garden? Well, you probably want to put your beds where they won't be disturbed by animals. How long does it take you to walk to the garden? If you've got it in the far back corner of your yard and it takes you a long time to get there, you're less likely to actually go to the garden. So put it in a spot with easy access, maybe just outside your back door. By picking a location that's really good for a garden, you're really setting yourself up for success. And if you have the patience, I recommend taking an entire year to decide where to put your garden. That way you can see all 4 seasons and really get a clue as to the sun and the animals and the water and those other factors that might influence you in your garden. The second mistake that a lot of gardeners make is ignoring the importance of soil. Soil is important. I can't state that enough. It's the most important aspect of your entire garden. In fact, 80% of plant problems can be attributed to something wrong with your soil. So take the time to learn about it. Learn how to amend it and make it stronger, because the soil feeds the entire garden. The plants get all of their nutrients from soil. If you don't spend the time to get your soil right, you're going to be spending a lot of time dealing with plant problems. Soil is key. The third common gardening mistake is choosing the wrong size garden. And usually it means trying to garden with too big of a garden in the beginning. It takes a lot of work. It looks easy. Put a few seeds in the ground, a few plants in the ground, and then reap the harvest at the end of the season. But there's a lot to it along the way. And if you start off too big, you might be overwhelmed by weeds and insects and all kinds of other problems. And then at the end of the season, you're just stressed and overworked to the point that you don't even want to do it anymore. So start off small. Start with just a single bed, maybe 2, and then work your way up. I've got a pretty big garden space now, but I've been spending 30 years learning how to do it. And even with that experience, I think it's a daunting task, even for me, but I'm trying it. I didn't start this big, I worked my way up to this size. And that's really the best thing for you to do. The fourth common mistake is planting or sowing seeds at the wrong time. We all want to get a jump on the garden season. So in spring, when we're ready for those plants to grow, we'll often put them in the ground, even though it might not be best. If you live in an area with snow and cold and freezing conditions, you need to learn about your last frost state. If you live in those same type of conditions, you also need to learn about your first frost state in the fall. I actually started some spinach in this bed in late summer. I knew that it could handle the cold and the snow that has happened since, and I'll be harvesting spinach well into November. I also know that I couldn't have started peppers and tomatoes at the same time because the cold would have killed them. So learn about the requirements of the plants. Can they handle the changing weather conditions that your region is going to have? Put those things together, the plants and the weather, and you should be able to be growing your plants at exactly the right time. They'll survive, you'll have a harvest. That's success. The fifth gardening mistake is just choosing the wrong plant. Now, much of that relates to the weather and when to put it in the ground. Your climate might not allow for some of the plants that you want to grow. There's a lot that I would like to plant, but in my region, in my climate, I just know there's a lot that won't grow. They're doomed to failure as soon as I put them in the ground. You also need to consider where you're putting the plant. Don't put it in the shade if it needs sun. Don't put it in the sun if it needs shade. Don't put it in a dry area if it needs a wet area. Look at all of those factors when choosing what plant you put in a particular location. Because if you choose the wrong plant for that location, it's not going to work. The sixth common mistake is just planting too much. The best example of this is zucchini. Most new gardeners want to put in 2 or 3 zucchini plants, and by the end of the season they've got zucchini coming out their ears. They're sneaking out at night and leaving it on their neighbors' doorsteps because there's just so much zucchini. Well, learn about plant production and how much you can get away with. 1 zucchini plant for a new gardener, I guarantee you that's probably enough. Don't start with 25 different types of tomatoes the first time you're doing it. Just start with 1 or 2. It's so easy to want to try a lot when all you should be doing is just trying a few, learning about it, getting it right, learning from some mistakes along the way, and then next year add that second variety or add a couple more plants. Just try not to do too much too soon. The 7th mistake may be the most common, and that's improper watering. I'm still guilty of this, and I've been doing it for a long time. Typically, it's over-watering. New gardeners in particular really want to give their plants what's best, so they water them constantly. Too much. And then the leaves start to yellow and the plant starts to suffer, and they think they're not watering the plant enough, so they water it some more and they kill it with kindness. The opposite holds true. You've heard that overwatering is a common mistake, so you really try to watch it. And then you underwater by just spraying it lightly a couple times a day. Actually get in there, stick your finger into the soil to see how moist it is when it comes time to determine whether you should water. Try to get away from a set schedule, because by watering the same amount every day, chances are you're overwatering or underwatering. Pay attention to the soil and pay attention to the plant, and you'll learn to do it right. Number 8 is overcrowding. It's trying to grow too many plants in too small a space. Typically, it's when we sow very small seeds, and then they pop up and we've got all these seedlings and we're happy. But you're going to have to kill some plants You're going to have to pull out some of those seedlings so that others will survive. If you've got two seedlings growing side by side, they are robbing each other of nutrients and water and sun, and neither one will do very well. But you pluck one out, and now this one has space to grow. If you put plants in the ground, like let's say 3 tomato plants right here, it may look okay when they're still pretty small, but when each plant turns into a 6 or 8 foot tall monster, now all of those plants will be suffering. So look at the seed packet. Look at the plant tag. See how big the plant is going to get when it reaches maturity, and take that into consideration when you first put it in the ground. Number 9 is spending too much money. That is so easy to do when you're a new gardener and you don't have a lot, or you're starting a new garden. But take some time to learn how to save some money. You don't need a lot of big, fancy, expensive tools. You can get by with some pretty basic stuff. My wheelbarrow was pretty basic. It didn't cost a lot, and I've been using it for well over 20 years. The wood chips that I'm using as a mulch didn't cost me anything. There are alternatives to going to the store and spending a lot of money. Talk to other gardeners in your area, because they'll be able to give you some of that advice. The plants that I put in the ground in spring, I start most of those from seed, because seed is much less expensive than putting a plant in the ground. So learn how to do seeds. There's lots of ways to garden without spending a lot of money. Number 10 on my list of common new gardener mistakes is overusing chemicals. And this is very prevalent because it's so easy to go to the store and buy a bottle and spray it and fix the problem that you thought you had. But that's the first part of the mistake, is not really knowing exactly what it is you had to start with. You see an insect on the plant and you want to spray it and kill it. Well, it might actually be a good insect. So step back. Take some time to learn what the problem really is before you automatically use chemicals. I try to practice chemical-free gardening, and it can be done. In the beginning, if you want to use chemicals, that's okay. Just learn about them. Use them according to the directions. Make sure that you really do have a problem, so that that weed you think you're spraying really is a weed. Or you spray the weed and then the spray blows onto another plant and you've killed a plant that you were trying to keep. Take some time, do it right, and really avoid overusing chemicals. Now, I would love to hear about other problems you may have encountered, mistakes you might have had when you were a new gardener. Let me know below in the comments. Or if you have any questions about these 10, go ahead and ask the questions, because there's a lot more mistakes out there, and you can expect to see another video with 10 more common mistakes. If you want to see more of these gardening videos, well then subscribe to the GardenerScott channel, and be sure to click on the bell so you're not left out and you know when new videos are coming. If you like this video, well, you can give me a thumbs up and share it. I'm GardenerScott. Enjoy gardening.